Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. It's your host, Gina Casbarro, and I'm coming on for a solo podcast episode today in honor of the new moon in Capricorn we just had on Sunday, January 18th. This energy is all about setting long-term goals with structure and intention and really taking your ideas and bringing them from the formless into the form. No matter what time of year you're listening to this is going to be a really powerful conversation about how to work with both logic and intuition to set heart-centered goals and really move forward towards them with purpose. So if you're ready to bring your dreams into reality, this conversation is for you. And I'm really excited to dive into this today because goal setting is something I've been doing for many, many years. You might know this about me, but I used to work at Lululemon, and goal setting was a huge practice that we shared with our employees. So pretty much from very early on when I started working at Lululemon, I was in charge of trainings and sharing this amazing practice of goal setting with people. So I've experimented with this in so many ways over the years, and I feel like I learn more and more every single year, every single month, every single day about how to really do this, like I said, from logic and intuition, without being attached, without grasping onto your goals so tightly that you prevent yourself from even enjoying the ride. Okay, so today I'm going to break it down into 5 phases that I really believe will support you if you want to set aligned goals in your life and start creating a plan, creating structure to work towards them. So, phase 1 is all about reflection and tuning into the essence of what really matters to you. And it's so interesting. This is coming to me right now as I'm sharing this with you. I often think about processes in relation to the 5 elements. So as a feng shui practitioner, I work with the 5 elements and they're in this creation cycle. And as I'm thinking about this now, they relate perfectly into these 5 phases that I'm about to share with you. So phase 1, like I said, is all about reflection, tuning into the essence of what matters to you. And if we were to think about this in terms of the elements, this is the water phase. It's the dreaming phase. It's the imagination phase of really giving yourself space to explore and the dream time and all of these beautiful watery aspects of giving yourself space to explore. So this can come from asking yourself these questions simply of, what do I desire? And when I say get to the essence of what matters, being able to ask yourself, why? Why do these things matter so much to me? What is it underneath this career path or this passion or my desire for family or my desire for anything that you might desire? Being able to dive a little deeper down below the surface and ask yourself, why does that matter to me? Because truly, I believe that that essence is so much more important than the exact form. Because we could connect to, say, what matters to you is contribution and personal growth and supporting people, let's say. There's so many ways to do that. Maybe you want to explore that in a career path, and yet that form could take many different shapes. And again, if you're connected to what matters to you underneath the surface, you can be less attached to it having to go a certain way, and you're more connected to what really matters to you at the end of the day. So again, this phase 1 of reflection is all about asking yourself these questions. What do I desire? Why do they matter? Also being able to connect with things like your core values. I was on a coaching call with one of my clients recently, and she was talking about how she felt this dissatisfaction in her life. Yet on one hand, she had everything that she could want, all of her needs were met, and yet there was some level of dissatisfaction that was still there. And I think that can sometimes happen because we're not living in alignment with our core values. So this is an important question to reflect on, to marinate in, to really ask yourself, what are my core values? What matters to me most? For example, some of mine are unity with nature, connection, authenticity, courage. So if I'm not living in alignment with those things, for me, something feels off. It feels like I'm not honoring the things that matter to me most. So again, this phase is all about answering these questions. And there are a lot of really fun ways to explore this. One of my favorite ways to be open to new ideas is to take myself on artist dates. Maybe you've heard me talk about this before. I love Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way, and an artist date is a date that you take yourself on solo, anywhere that sparks your inspiration, creativity, curiosity. It might be a bookstore, it might be a museum, it might be a cooking class, it might be you watch a certain documentary or movie or show at home by yourself that really speaks to you. And you really go into that activity with the invitation to spirit, to your heart, to your intuition. May I be guided? May I be guided to some spark or breadcrumb that will serve me on my journey right now. Let me know what that is. And for example, one way that this showed up in my life at a point where I was really struggling to identify what was next. I was at a huge transition point in my life. This was back in 2020. And at the time, I was house hunting. I thought that I wanted to buy a house in Baltimore, and nothing was really lining up. Nothing was really working out. So finally, I took myself on an artist date and I went to Barnes and Noble, and I just had that prayer of, may I be guided? May I be guided to something that will help me find clarity in what my next step is right now. And I made my way to the travel section and I started thinking about, maybe I am not meant to be in Baltimore right now. Maybe there's somewhere else that it would serve me to live. I don't know. Spirit, send me a sign. And I end up scanning the shelves and picking out the book To Shake the Sleeping Self by Jedediah Jenkins. And this book is about someone who took a bike pilgrimage from Oregon to the tip of Argentina. And this reminded me that I have always wanted to go on some kind of epic quest and adventure. So exploration, adventure, those have always been core values of mine as well. So when I picked up this book, I got this divine download of, wouldn't it be amazing to take a year-long road trip around the United States and explore maybe my top 10 cities that I might consider living in, and just allow myself to follow the sparks, follow the breadcrumbs on my path and see what happens. And again, this came from being in this reflection phase of giving myself permission to not know what was next. There were so many question marks in my life at this time, and I carved out the space for this artist date, for asking myself this question, for pondering from this intuitive place of, what do I desire now? What's important to me now? What's calling to me now? And from making that space and setting the intention to be open to receive, I got this idea. So again, for you, maybe you're in this phase of, maybe there's a lot of question marks in your life about what's next. And I really invite you to give yourself the space and the permission to explore and to use both the mind and the heart. So for me, the way that showed up is, it takes intention, right? To choose how to spend our time. So for me, at that time, I knew reflection was important. I knew creativity was important. So I was making time in my schedule for reading the book, The Artist Way. I was making time in my schedule to go on artist dates. I was looking to see, where could I carve out and protect time for this? So the mind and logic can be a massive support system to us. I feel like sometimes logic might get like a bad rap, and truly, as it is in everything, we need both the masculine and feminine aspects, both the yin and the yang, and they can work together in beautiful harmony. So that's one way I really see logic and the mind supporting the heart, is to be able to create the structure for things. So once we feel called to something, protecting the time and space, looking to see, okay, on Tuesday at 5 p.m., I'm going to go to Barnes and Noble, planning for it, rearranging things in my schedule in order to do that. It takes something to make time for intuitive practices, for example. So using both the mind and the heart to do these things together. Phase 2 is about activating your vision. And if I was going to relate this to the 5 elements in feng shui, it would be connected to wood. So wood is about growth. It's about creativity. It's about vision. Imagine like the tall trees, being able to see an expanded vision. It's about brainstorming. It's like bringing that energy to life. So after you've moved through phase 1, where you've been dreaming, you've been imagining, you've been swimming in these waters of your desires, now it's about crystallizing that a little bit more. So activating your vision and really starting to flesh out in a little bit more detail. Okay, what is the vision for my life that I would really love to lean into? So for me, for example, with that road trip, after I got that idea, then I spent the next 10 months bringing more clarity and more form to this idea and asking myself different questions, thinking about structures and logistics and all these things. And what came first again was connecting to the essence of what matters. Because like I said, that's way more important than the form. So one way that I did that was by writing out a vision that included every area of my life around this trip. The nature that I wanted to experience, the people that I wanted to meet, the personal growth that I would love to explore, all these different areas of why that trip was important, how I wanted to feel, and what that could look like. And when I wrote out this vision, it wasn't like, I'm going to go to 26 cities and this is the exact list that it's going to be, and it's going to happen exactly like this, totally planned, totally structured, totally controlled. No, it was more about the essence. I want to feel like this. And thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit, for guiding me to the people that I meant to meet. And thank you for showing me what cities that would support me most to visit. That was what my prayer sounded like. And again, for you, I really invite you to think about something similar of connecting to that essence of what matters and beginning to clarify the vision. And you could do this in different time frames. You could build out a vision 3 years out. You could build out a vision 1 year out. So for example, I'll tell you about 2 different clients right now. One of my clients knows that she wants to explore something different in her career, and she's not sure exactly what that is. So when we thought about this year, we broke it down into quarters and really thought about, okay, if this was the arc of a story, what would be the theme of each of these 4 chapters of this year? And quarter 1 was about kind of like what we're talking about right now, these phases. Quarter 1 was about dreaming, exploring, giving herself permission to follow these different sparks. Quarter 2 was about really choosing one of these things and putting more energy and intention into that. And quarter 3 was about really seeing, what am I learning from the past 6 months? What's working? What am I really drawn to? Is there a business plan I want to create? Is there something I really want to direct my time and energy to and really move forward towards that? And then quarter 4 in the fall was about evaluation, celebration, learning, resetting for the next year. So you might not have crystal clear goals, right? Some people have a little bit more clarity of, okay, and this is, for example, another client. She has a current business and she knows she wants to change directions a little bit in that business. So I was talking to her about thinking about more of a 3-year plan and being able to imagine of, okay, in 3 years, if I could guess, if I could dream, what I would love my business and my life to be like 3 years out, what could that be? And just give yourself permission to explore and answer that question to the best of your ability right now. And then imagining and breaking it down of, okay, if that's the 3-year vision, what do I think 2 years might look like? What phase would I be at in my business at 2 years? And then again, breaking it down to 1 year of, okay, this year, what do I need to be focused on in order to make year number 2 and year number 3 possible? What skills do I need to be building? Where do I need to be shifting my focus of time and energy and attention in my business? And starting to imagine and see that bigger picture vision. Again, you're like climbing to the top of the tree at that outlook and being able to assess the terrain and gather information. Ask yourself, oh, there's a mountain over there. I bet that I need to prepare extra supplies in order to get over that mountain. Or there's a river over there. I better bring my bathing suit, whatever. You get it. Being able to assess the terrain and ask yourself, what are the obstacles I might face? How might I overcome them? What skills might I need? So again, this is about using both logic and intuition to explore these questions. This isn't about control. This isn't about needing to plan every single thing in your life. And it is about, like I said, using all of the superpowers that we have. Our brain has tremendous capability. Our heart has tremendous energy and capability. And we can bring these two together to support us, to propel us and moving in the direction that we imagine we would like to go now. And of course, that may change. So again, there's lots of different practices I use with my coaching clients at this phase. And I shared one of them I used for myself was writing out that vision of that road trip. I also recorded that vision on my phone and then listened to it every day for like 10 months when I was going to sleep, when I was waking up. It was like 17 minutes long, and just washing that vision over my brain so that I could get my brain and my mind on board of this is possible. I can see this. I can feel this. I can imagine this, because that is sometimes the biggest hurdle in being able to take action. If our brains don't believe something is possible, it's going to be much harder to feel like you can take action towards that. And if your brain feels like something is inevitable and it's seen you walk that path 100 times, 1,000 times in your mind, in your imagination, there's going to be much less resistance to taking those inspired actions. So that recorded vision is one tool. Another tool I love using is something called a mind movie. So it's kind of like a vision board, but it's a movie. So you can make a Canva deck is what I've been using lately. I was about to say PowerPoint, but I definitely don't use PowerPoint anymore. But you can make slides and that have pictures, that have phrases, again, those key phrases of what's important to you, what matters to you, and seeing that imagery. You can connect it to music and make a video out of it. So that's something I did for my road trip. When I got back, I've done this the past couple years. And again, it helps you get into that energy of what that vision feels like. Another tool I love using that works with both the mind and the heart is something I call a feng shui identity audit. So this is something I offer to all of my coaching clients and Own Your Becoming right now, about working with your environment to surround yourself with sensory details, objects, images that remind you of this vision, that help you feel the way that you want to feel now. Because for me, when it came to goal setting, I had always been a very analytical person, a very logical person, like the mind does. I wanted all the answers. I wanted to have the perfect plan. And sometimes I would stress myself out so bad trying to figure out how to make something happen. So I got into feng shui in the first place because I was so tired and like mentally exhausted of like thinking myself to death. So feng shui is a way to approach your goals from this softer, more intuitive perspective. And for me, it also feels like a declaration to spirit that I am willing to make changes physically in my environment. I'm willing to do things to make space for my goals, to take action towards my goals. This could be something as simple as if it's important to you to welcome in a new relationship in your life, let's say. And maybe right now your bed is pushed up against a wall. So one side of your bed is against a wall and the other side of your bed is free, and you have one bedside table. So if you were to imagine a partner trying to get in that bed, it would be a little challenging. So if you moved your bed out from the wall so that there's space on both sides of the bed for two people to access that bed, and put a second bedside table. So now there's two bedside tables, you have two pillows, you have equal access on both sides of the bed. That is making a change in your physical environment. And as you're doing that, you can imagine, wouldn't it be lovely to welcome in a beautiful partnership in my life? And imagining two people sharing this bed together. And again, this is not about attachment. This is not about, I need this in order to be happy now. This is about simply making the space and being willing to make changes in your environment, in yourself, in your lifestyle, in your habits that create more possibility for this reality, create more belief in your mindset that this reality is possible. And there's all kinds of ways you can work with your environment to, again, create new habits, new beliefs. So if you wanted to work out more, maybe you want to do yoga, you want to meditate, and you create a space in your house, in your room, that is really inviting, that your yoga mat is right there, you have a candle, you have some essential oils, you have everything that you need. It's going to remind you every single day of your goals. It's going to invite you to come do yoga there. And the more excited you are to do that, the more likely you are to make that a habit. There's all kinds of studies and research about the power of pairing sensory details, smell, touch, sight, to thoughts. They can help connect new neural pathways, create new patterns in the brain to make it easier for you to think something, make it easier for you to change your behavior. So working with feng shui is another really powerful way to activate this vision, to bring this vision to life in your environment right now. Phase 3 is about breaking your goals down to the top essentials, maybe your top 3 essentials. And the 5 elements, this would be the fire stage. It's about really bringing energy and intention into something specific, really turning the heat up on something. So in phase 2, when you were activating your vision, you were again growing those ideas, you were using your creativity and imagination to clarify them, you were seeing a bigger picture, overview, what's the long-term vision of where I'm going? And now phase 3, like I said, is about igniting your intentions and getting really clear on what are your priorities. Because if you have too many priorities, it's very easy to get distracted or to end up walking around in circles because you're trying to do a million things at once. So this is about working backwards from that long-term vision and asking yourself, what matters now? In this phase of my life, in this chapter of the story, what's most important? And again, going back to those 2 clients, the first one who had the desire to explore different options in her career, quarter 1 was all about the exploration phase. So we talked about this quarter, January, February, March. What was most important was making time for these exploration practices, giving herself a few hours each week, putting that time on her schedule for things like artist dates, for things like experimenting with the sparks that were calling her forward, trying out all different kinds of things. She wasn't in the phase yet of being really focused on just one thing. This was her dreaming phase. So that can be an essential. That can be an intention. Giving myself structured time and space every single week to dream, to play, to explore. That is a clear focus and intention. So for you, again, being able to ask yourself what matters most. Maybe this year you could have 3 intentions. You can break it down by quarter. You could break it down by month, but continuing to ask yourself that question, what matters now? And a way that I do this with my clients in Own Your Becoming, the 6-month coaching program that I'm offering right now, is one way is through these monthly group spark sessions. So this is something that I've been doing for myself probably for 3 or 4 years that every month, at the end of one month, I sit down with my oracle card for that month, with my bigger picture goals and intentions, and I ask myself, what are my top priorities this month? And I carve out a few hours, typically on a Saturday morning, could be like 4 or 5 hours, to use both logic and intuition to ask myself these questions. And I always have some kind of creative practice. Maybe I'm collaging and letting my mind and my heart just ponder on that question and see what images come through, see what pages of magazines stand out to me, see what words stand out to me. And I use that exercise to drop out of the mind space and allow my heart to guide me to messages, to intuitive insights that might serve me right now. And I have that beautiful picture. And then I pull a year ahead oracle card spread for myself every single year. And I do the same for my coaching clients. So this spread has a card for every single month, and it has a theme card for the year. And I use this animal spirit deck. So for me, I'm in an oyster year. And for me, this month in January, for example, I'm in a black egg month. And that's like a spiritual card. So anyways, I have this card that represents the energies that I might be experiencing this month. And I review that. I read through the description again and see what's standing out to me. And for me, this month is all about connecting to my inner truth, listening for my inner wisdom, spending time to explore that and having the courage to let that come to the surface. So when I set monthly goals, I do this in a number of ways. One is I come up with my top 3 goals and intentions this month. And that might be a professional goal. It might be a personal goal. Right now for me in January, my top 3 goals, one of them is around sharing about Own Your Becoming and really communicating from my heart the essence of what this program is about. And the 2 other goals for me are about connecting to my house through feng shui and opening up to guidance. So for me, one of my roommates is moving out in April. So part of what helped me find my roommates 2 years ago was doing this beautiful intuitive ritual with my house, creating this nature mandala, praying, meditating, and asking for the house's guidance to support me in connecting with the roommate that would be most aligned with me and most aligned with this vision I had for myself and my life and this home. So for me in January, that's another important goal and intention, to really carve out time for this ritual, carve out time for this practice, and really open up to this connection and guidance from my house to support me in calling in a roommate that's going to be really aligned with me. So that's another big goal and intention. Another that's connected to that for me is doing my own feng shui identity audit. What's the next thing I feel called to change or shift in my space that's going to support me, my self-concept, my goals? So those are my 3 top goals and intentions for January. And then in this spark ceremony, I also hone in on what are the energy practices that I believe are going to support me. So again, this is the logic and intuition. I set those more kind of like concrete, logical goals and intentions. And now the energy practices are, what are the intuitive, creative, nourishing practices I think that are going to support me most this month? So for me right now, one practice I'm really loving, there's a book by Colette Baron-Reid. She makes oracle cards. She's an amazing spiritual, intuitive guide. And she has a book called The Art of Manifesting. It is a doodling practice to connect to your dreams, connect to your goals, to connect with spiritual guidance. And I've been going down kind of like a doodling rabbit hole the past really year, actually. So this is a beautiful continuation of this practice because, again, doodling, drawing, colors, energetics, symbols. This is all what feng shui is about too. It's so fascinating how we respond to these things. And it's another tool to get us out of the mind, to stop trying to figure everything out logically and come back to the heart. And I did one of these practices yesterday when my mind was kind of spinning, thinking about my goals and thinking about how am I going to make this work? How are all these things going to come together? And just getting lost in the labyrinth of my mind, which happens sometimes. I went back to one of these art of manifesting doodling exercises, and it immediately helped me shift my vibration. And again, this is the power of working with both the mind and the heart, because sometimes the mind can drift off into those pre-programmed fears, doubts, limitations, the survival patterns and mechanisms that are built into us, all of that fear and anxiety that's part of being human and being an animal in a body. So being able to have tools and practices that help me calm that makes me so much more receptive to receive inspired ideas, inspired breadcrumbs that will guide me on my path and help me, again, quiet the noise so that I can hear my heart. And then I can ask my mind to support me again of, okay, great, I have this idea. How am I going to make this happen? Where do I need to put aside time on my schedule? What do I need to do? Because the brain loves problem solving. So if you direct it in a really powerful way of, okay, I want to create this, brain, what are all the ideas you have that could support me in doing this? That's a powerful way to direct your brain intentionally to support you in what really matters to you. So phase 3, like I said, was all about breaking things down into your 3 essentials, getting really clear about your priorities so you can focus your energy. Imagine like a magnifying glass with the sun and the light beaming through the magnifying glass and lighting a fire. This is what this phase is about. It's activating that fire, activating your energy in a really intentional way so that you can move forward in the direction of your goals. Phase 4 is about taking inspired action. And this is also part of my process that I call kinetic confidence. This is about moving forward. One of my spiritual teachers, Jamie Alvarez Acosta, always says, faith without action is not faith. So when it comes to manifestation, when it comes to moving forward towards our goals, yes, spirit and the universe will support us. And it's also up to us to take action, to hone in on what our hearts, what our minds believe will be the next step in the direction of our dreams, and to trust ourselves to take that action. So you've marinated on what matters to you. You're clear about your goals, your values, your why. You've activated your vision. You have that bigger picture of this is where I'm going 1 year from now, 3 years from now. You've honed in on what are my 3 essentials. And now you're asking yourself, what's the one thing, the one step I can take next? And this isn't about needing the perfect plan. This isn't about figuring everything out. This is about being willing to take it one step at a time and trusting that you gain information as you take those steps forward. And so often people want all the information ahead of time. They want a guarantee of what's going to happen. If I take these 10 steps, is it going to be worth it? So I really, at this phase and at all the phases, one thing that is so important is to remember that this is not about being attached to creating or achieving one goal, being attached to reaching the final destination and thinking that I can only be happy when, I can only be satisfied when, I can only feel proud when. This whole thing is about learning to enjoy the process and living your life every day in alignment with your values, living your life every day connected to what matters to you, and knowing that your life is a living prayer. It is a living devotion to yourself, to your passion, to your purpose, and that you don't have to wait for any future date, any future accomplishment, any future achievement in order to be happy. So when you're living in this state, I really believe it's a lot easier to take those inspired actions because you have less attachment to what's going to happen. And I feel like attachment is something I've been working on for years, particularly this one, of really surrendering that attachment, surrendering the need for things to go exactly according to plan. Like I said at the beginning of this conversation, the essence is more important than the form. So phase 4 is all about using the mind and the heart to answer that question, what is the step I feel called to take next? And then having the courage to take it and surrendering, needing to know exactly how it's going to turn out, exactly what's going to happen, but trusting yourself to make your best guess and to enjoy the process of walking the path. And this is a huge thing that we focus on in my one-on-one coaching calls with my clients. On every single call, you always walk away with what is the one inspired action you're going to focus on this week. And you have the ability and the space to talk that through, to drop into your inner wisdom, to explore that from both the mind and the heart perspective, hone in on what is that practice, what is that step, what is that thing you're going to do. And then you have support and accountability every week in following through with that action. And phase 4, if we're thinking about the elements, is earth. So earth is all about cultivation. It's all about what you're growing. It's all about, do you have the patience and the dedication to plant seeds, to tend to those seeds, to water those seeds? And remember that the day you plant the tree is not the day you eat the fruit. And to be able to, again, have patience and enjoy the process of cultivation and remember that growth takes time. So that's what element is connected to this phase. And I really invite you to think about that for yourself. What am I planting? Am I willing to tend to this? Am I willing to weed my garden? Am I willing to water this every day, to fertilize this every day, to go outside and appreciate my garden in every single phase, marvel at that first little leaf that pops up, the first flower that pops up, and really have gratitude for every single phase of the growth process? That's what Earth is all about. Phase 5 is about evaluation and celebration. And this is about the metal element in feng shui. And metal is all about refinement. It's all about curation. It's all about pruning, letting go of what's no longer needed, and making space for what is to shine brighter. So this phase of the goal setting process is about asking yourself this question: what's working? What's not working? What would I do differently? You've gone through this whole journey. You're clear on what matters to you. You activated your vision. You got clear on your 3 essentials. You started taking inspired action. And now it's about pausing to look back and see, to learn from your experience, to gather information, to gather lessons, and also to celebrate. Celebration is so key. So whenever I do evaluations for myself, whenever I guide my clients through evaluations, the first question is always, what's working? Because what we focus on expands. So, and this is again, the mind and the heart. If we first asked ourselves, what's not working? We would have this whole list of what's not working. And when you think about that, it's like, it feels heavy. It feels hard. It feels like I'm so far. Everything's not working. And when you're already in that energy, it's much harder to ask yourself the question of what is working. So again, your brain loves to answer a question. So ask yourself the question of what is working. And if your brain is stubborn at first and says nothing, lovingly ask again. And oftentimes we're not used to celebrating small things. We want to celebrate the big growth, the promotion, the marriage, the marathon that we just ran. We don't want to celebrate, I put my sneakers on today and I ran half a block and then I got tired. The brains might say, that's nothing. But if you didn't run at all yesterday and you put your sneakers on today and you ran for 10 seconds, that's progress. So being able to strengthen your ability to notice progress, to celebrate even the small things. I'm laughing right now because I started making sourdough bread like a year ago. And And I made it for most of 2025. And then I stopped because it was time consuming and I was like traveling and I didn't feel like doing it anymore. But then I missed it. So now I'm in the process of reactivating a freeze dried sourdough starter. It has taken a couple days. I'm like in week 2 right now. It's taking time. It's taking longer than the directions said it was going to take. And my starter's name is Joy. If you have a sourdough starter, maybe you've heard some people name their starters. This is Joy number 2. My first sourdough starter was also Joy. Anyways, I'm cultivating and activating Joy, reawakening her. And every time I go to feed her, I'm noticing, what's changing? Did the sourdough rise at all? Are there any more bubbles? And for the past couple of days, there haven't been a lot of bubbles like on the surface of the sourdough. If you know anything about sourdough, it's like yeasty. It needs to be activated. It needs to be alive in order to use this starter. And today, there was one bubble on the surface of the sourdough. I felt so excited of like, oh my gosh, look at this bubble. It's clearly growing. Something is happening. Even though like the rise hasn't doubled yet, it's not like this big grand thing that's going on, but there was one bubble. And being able to, again, for you, celebrate what's the small steps that you're taking. Any evidence, it all counts, because as you strengthen this muscle and look for what's working, you will begin to see more of what's working. And when you do that, that changes how you feel. And again, this is where the mind and the heart go together, because I believe in order to hear the wisdom of our heart, in order to hear the wisdom of our intuition, it can be blocked sometimes if our minds are super loud, if we're in a low vibration or frequency of emotion, of energy, if our minds are spinning and like, I'm not capable, nothing is working, it's going to be a lot harder to hear the heart trying to tell you how it is working or trying to give you signs and directions, because it's going to be so clouded by all these other things. So using the mind really intentionally to evaluate in a way that supports you and asking yourself what is working, and go on a rampage of gratitude and appreciation for all the things that are working. And then ask yourself from that energy of like, you're feeling amazing, you're feeling capable, you're feeling proud, you can look at what's not working or what you want to do differently from a more objective place. You will be less impacted and make it much less personal. At least that's what I've found. The more you practice focusing on what's working. So then once you have that information, you've gathered that data with your mind, then you can use both your mind and your heart to ask yourself and start this process again of, okay, what are my essentials now? If I could refine one thing, if I could do one thing differently, what might that be? And maybe next month, when you're setting your goals and intentions, you're using that information to tweak your path. It's like, I think when people talk about sailing, they have the path and the direction that they're going. And so often they're like not perfectly on the path. They might be like going a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, but they're always kind of like coming back to that center point. So as you're gathering this information, you're evaluating, maybe you go a little bit left, maybe you go a little bit right, but as you're walking and as you're traveling, you're continuing to clarify the direction that you're moving in. You're continuing to receive information from both your mind and your heart. You're trusting the process and you're enjoying the journey. And above all, I invite you to remember that life is just one big experiment. It's one big playground for us to play in, for us to enjoy. And the more that we can enjoy this moment, the more that we can have gratitude for this moment, the more energy we'll have to direct towards what's calling us forward, to pour into our purpose, to pour into our passions, to pour into the people and causes that matter most to us. So that's the phases. These are the ways that I see being able to really harmonize and work with both logic and intuition as you travel down your path. And again, this is not about attachment. This is not about demanding that your goals happen on a specific timeline. Let's say you have your 3-year plan and you create your goals and it takes 5 years. So what? You made your best guess of what it would take to get there in 3 years, and it didn't quite take that. And you've gathered information along the way. So for me too, I really think about and focus on the who I'm becoming at each phase of the journey. That's why my 6 month coaching program is called Own Your Becoming. It's about looking at your past and celebrating how far you've come, everything that's gotten you here, everything that you are, and really celebrating that and using that energy to fuel you in the future. So, if this is something that you want support with, if you want to be able to embrace your journey and create your future from a place of passion, of play, of purpose, and let go of pressure and force, Own Your Becoming will support you to do that. If you're curious to learn more about this container and see if this work is right for you, go to ginacasbarro.com/own your becoming. This container involves both one-on-one coaching, group coaching sessions, these monthly spark sessions that I mentioned, a feng shui identity audit, an opportunity to come on this podcast if you want to share your story, and opportunities to capture your essence visually. If you're local to me in person, that would be a photo shoot if you want to partake in that. And if not, there's other opportunities and experiences we can create for you to celebrate yourself internally and share that with the world externally. So the first monthly group spark session starts on January 30th. If you want to join us for that session, go to ginacasbarro.com/own your becoming, book a free clarity call, and let's talk about it. Let's talk and explore and see what are the dreams and desires on your heart and how this container could support you in working towards your vision with both logic and intuition. All right, my friend, if that calls to you, I can't wait to connect. And I hope you lean into this Capricorn new moon energy. Even if you're listening to this afterwards, I feel like the wave still can carry you forward. So, really asking yourself, what are you called to create next? And what's one baby step you can take towards that vision? All right, my friend, sending you so much love, and I'll talk to you soon.